Morning, America, how are ya? Monday morning radio. We'll be 500 miles before the day is done. I'm the train they call the City of New Orleans. Hi, I'm Denny Jelsma, and I'm at the world famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is always a pleasure. Before we get started this morning, this show is brought to you by Jelsma Graphics, the people that make all the railroad embroidery clothing. Make sure that you go to jelsma.com and shop for all your railroad clothing. As you can see, we make shirts, hats, jackets, you name it, we have it. jelsma.com. And with that being said, show and tell starts right now. Well, show and tell starts right now, and today we have a very exciting program, and I'm excited because I rode this train back in 1968 from Fort Madison, Iowa, down to Flagstaff. And still remember that, got a lot of pictures for you. But today's, I'm going to talk about Santa Fe's El Capitan 1938 version. And the train is all stainless steel. It was a Bud car that came out in 1938. You've got to remember, in 1937, Santa Fe decided to put lightweight Bud cars for their Super Chief, and the following year they introduced the lightweight Bud cars for the El Capitan. And remember that there was three car manufacturers, and there were the Pullman Company, American Car and Foundry out of St. Louis, and then the Bud out of Philadelphia. Everybody will tell you the Buds were absolutely the best car. They had a particular patent on how they did the corrugation, and they were just great cars. They're still running today. But what we have here is the 1938 version, and the train left Chicago. It took a little under 40 hours, and it was an extra fare on the El Capitan. Santa Fe had a lot of trains going from Chicago to LA, such as the Grand Canyon and some others, but they wanted to have a premier lightweight stainless steel passenger train, and they hired some southeast or southwest artist to give it the Indian effect, and they had a lot of amenities on this coach train that most coach trains really didn't have. The seats were really luscious, and they charged extra. In 1938, to go from Chicago to LA, the fare was typically $35. When you rode the El Capitan, it was $39. There was an extra fare, and each seat was assigned going. And so the version that I have at Show and Tell today, I'm really proud of, is we have the Broadway E1s with a slant nose. They're just absolutely spot on and gorgeous with a lot of LED lights. And the rest of the train is Walter's lightweight car that they brought in of the El Capitan. The El Capitan naturally had an RPO, and once again, the RPO will vary. Different RPOs were used on this train. They always had a baggage. Here again, depending upon the load, sometimes they had 2 to 3. You got to understand that they ran these trains during the, let's say, the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. They ran these trains in sections because they were so heavily patronized. And for an example, depending upon the season, especially in the summertime, they would be 2 to 3 sections, and they would leave 15 minutes behind, sometimes 10. And so, can you imagine the guy that's putting together the schedule there in Chicago trying to come up with all the cars, and that's why sometimes you will see a photo of a say 1938 version of a train, or 1940, and it had a couple of different odd coaches in it. Well, because that was probably maybe a second or a third section of the train. But the first section was always the very best cars, and they put it together, and they really didn't have any head-in equipment on this except for the RPO and the baggage, because it was a premier first-class coach only from Chicago to LA. They had a combination of a coach and a lounge car where you could buy sodas and little snacks, and all of the seats on these cars were designed with leg rest, and they had the Southwest portraying the American Indians. They really concentrated on the Navajo tribe, and there was a lot of Indian paintings inside. They had a full diner. Then they also had like a sandwich car, or a countertop where it was just like a Kresge's countertop, or a Woolworths, and if you just wanted a sandwich or a hamburger or something like that, you could just sit there. And so these were two amenities that was really put a lot of emphasis on for the traveling public that was not going in a sleeper. It was just strictly coach. And then we had all the coach cars. They had a beautiful cars. Then the crowning part of this train was the observation car. And this particular car was made into a coach, and later some of these cars were made into from lounges to sleeping cars. But this was the 1938 version of Santa Fe's El Capitan, extra fare, and it took a little under 40 hours to make this trip. And for you to ride on Santa Fe, there was two trains you really wanted to ride on, and that would be the Santa Fe El Capitan, which you see right here, and the Santa Fe Super Chief. Later on, those two trains were combined. The front end was the El Capitan, the back end was the Super Chief, and you could not go in between the two, even though there were two trains that was ran by one. And so, one of the things that I highly recommend, and you've heard me many times, is join historical societies. The Santa Fe has a great historical society, and you can learn all kinds of information on it. I personally belong to about 10 historical societies, and you get so much information. And so I highly recommend that. But this is this morning's show and tell of Santa Fe's El Capitan, the all-coach deluxe train, Chicago to LA. And that's the way it is at the world-famous Jacksonville Terminal Railroad Museum in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the sun always shines and running trains is always a pleasure in peace and harmony.